Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of A Look in the Future. As always, we're asking, what would you do if you can go in the future and ask yourself questions? Specifically, how do you grow your firm? How do you transition to advisory services and more? Luckily for us, we don't need to invent time travel. We can just ask the time traveler himself, Paul Latham, and learn the knowledge we need at our firms to evolve into advisory services, and as we said many times, become the most relevant advisor to our clients. As always, I'm Garrett Wagner, your entrepreneurial CPA channel host. And as always, I'm excited to be joined by the legendary Paul Latham of Hayden Rock Solutions, because I know I always learn something when I talk to Paul, so I hope you do too. So Paul, I've been thinking about this one. Obviously, COVID-19, crazy times we're going through in 2020. And I want to kind of ask you, as you kind of put your visors on, as you look to the future, what's another trend that we haven't talked about yet that we should be an eye out for in the profession as we kind of shift to this new normal? What are we missing today with all this other chaos on our plate that we might not be thinking about?
Yeah, hi Garrett. Yeah, it's a good question. We were obviously chatting before the episode began, and one of the subjects that actually sprung to mind, and you talk about me being a time traveler, and sometimes I'm a bit stupid because it takes me a while to remember some of the things that happened 20 years ago. But one of the things we've noticed is increasingly a trend towards accountants working with financial advisors. And I'm just going to put up on the screen some notes I made. Accountants and financial advisors beginning to form what I call solid partnerships to work together. And when I say solid partnerships, they may not be inside the same accounting firm or business, but they have a proper financial relationship. It's not a referral type relationship. It's a solid partnership. And the reason why I say I'm a bit slow on this is that, you see, when I look back through my time traveling at Latham's, we actually had this inside our business. Me as the accountant, I always worked with a guy called Simon. Simon was a financial advisor, and we were a double act. And we were a very effective double act in working with the client. But of course, sometimes time brings, a little bit of mist in your memory. And so, when Hayden Rock started, we very much focused on working with accountants, but somewhere along the line, I forgot, if you like, that working with other types of professionals is actually beneficial. And the reason why it's beneficial is because you can begin to use, if you like, different character traits of different types of people. If we're looking there at accountants and financial advisors, typically, and I put the word typically there, obviously case to case it can be different, but typically they have different character traits that when you put them together can really help to lead and influence client behavior. And leading and influencing is all it's really talking about. It's not selling, it's helping clients to do something that they really want to do, but maybe don't get around to doing. So you're beginning to lead and influence them to help them. And certainly the way we used to do that at Latham's, and indeed we increasingly do today, is we use something that we happen to use something called DISC profiling. And I think I know, Garrett, that that's something that's also close to your heart. So before I get going on this, you may want to sort of give your experience of DISC profiling.
Yeah, I mean, like Paul, like you, we use DISC internally. We use it with the entrepreneurial CPA program because we feel like that understanding your motivation, the motivation of others, is so important. If you want to be an advisor and a consultant, we talked about before, Paul, you really got to help drive change in the clients, and you can't talk to them all the same. And DISC helps you understand that. It's a tremendous system. There's a lot of them out there. I feel like this is one of the better ones because it's simple, like it says on here. Paul, I'm also going to say, based on knowing you for a while, that if I was to guess your profile here, that you're a pretty solid mix between the D and the I. It's D because you can be pretty hard and rigid, and you know what you like, and you know what you want, and you want it now.
Yep.
But then I for influence and innovation, where you've also created this whole system and idea, and you're really pushing the boundaries of innovation and change.
Yeah.
Those are your two sides. You kind of flip back.
Yeah, you're actually quite correct there, Gareth. I mean, actually, my D was higher than my I in this because ultimately it mattered more to me to make things happen and whilst, I mean, the way it was always explained to me, influencing people, yeah, I can be really nice and charming to people, but truthfully, I do that mainly because I want the thing to succeed. So my high D means I also have a high I, because it's part and parcel of me succeeding, if you like. And then for an accountant, I have a relatively low S, which sort of means I'm quite change orientated, and I have a relatively low attention to detail. So I'm not a particularly typical accountant. How about yourself, Gareth? What are you?
Pretty similar, D and I. My D tends to be, especially when I'm a little more stressed, I'll be a little more D, like direct to the point,
Yeah,
like go, like let's get this done.
exactly.
And then a little less stress, more I, more like, for me, the I is a little more innovation and change and like creating these new ideas.
Yeah.
And then same thing, not a ton of S or C balanced in there.
Yeah.
But it's those two, the D and the I, that drive that.
Yeah.
Drive and influence and innovation change.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. But you see, we're relatively untypical in that, because I can tell you, I mean, we did DISC profiles. I mean, I had 250 people at Latham's, and I can tell you that's not normal. And on the whole, the typical accountant has a high S and a high C. They're stable, and attention to detail and compliance are their sort of key factors. So what you'll see with the typical accountant is that they have the high S and the high C. They're inclined towards being detailed and very stable and predictable, with a lower D and an I. So they're less inclined to drive or influence clients. And I stress here, I'm talking typically. By contrast, the typical financial advisor will be the reverse. They're much more likely to be the high D and I, where they're beginning to drive action, influence clients, but maybe more change orientated, less attention to detail. And the reality actually is it doesn't really matter. I mean, I've just given the typical there, but it doesn't really matter as long as what you begin to do is match people to form appropriately functioning teams. And you see, and then assuming that the roles and responsibilities between the various parties are clear and agreed in advance, and everyone knows what their job is and where their strengths lie, then this actually creates great potential for effective collaboration. And you talked about trends and things, and that's something that it's weird really, because I see it all the time now, and it's almost like the penny has dropped again. And then I ask myself, well, why didn't that penny drop a little bit earlier? Because I saw this 20 years ago. Me and Simon working together were a particularly great collaborative team, and we were really good with clients, and we meshed together very well. And so what's really happening, and certainly the way we work and the sort of trends that we've begun to see, is that we have a whole process, by the way, of matching together accountants and advisors. But to us, the beginning, and it's the same as everything else, I talk about vision, plan and desire, but we make absolutely sure that right at the beginning, we spend 4 or 5 hours with those parties to make sure that we share, or when I say we share, they share a business vision. And, obviously the words vary from business to business, but generally speaking, it comes down to forming an effective 21st century team who together can provide proactive value-added client solutions. And, we're going to work together and we're going to do that. And then having done that, the next step for us is to agree respective roles and responsibilities. And we help them with process, and we help them with coaching, and we stress accountability. So if you like, it's vision, the process and the coaching is part of the plan, and the accountability is making sure we maintain the desire. And, I'm just showing here a sort of section from our one of our internal processes where we're beginning to do this. And as it says here, if you're to achieve your objective, in this case, we're talking to the accountant, making a meaningful transition, we recommend that we spend some time prior to coaching to agree roles and responsibilities. And that exponentially improves your chances of success. And again, here, typical accountant, that really what the accountant is bringing to the proverbial party is trust of the client. And I'm not going to go through all the words there, but essentially what the client is bringing, massive strength, is trust. And the client knows them. Meanwhile, the advisor is bringing, the ability to drive and influence clients, and then put it together And what we sort of agree at the end is those parties, we're going to hold each other accountable to deliver on the personal behavioral promises to each other. So we're going to work together and we're going to hold each other accountable. And we also have a part to play in that because of the coaching. And by the way, we have a whole process where we do this. We spend the first 90 days really working on building habits, because of course everyone goes into this stuff with good intentions, but it's just like giving up smoking or anything like that. You've got to work at building these habits. There's a whole thing about, if you've not, it takes you at least 6 to 8 to 10 weeks to build a habit. And we actually spend 90 days really focusing on building habits so that they do talk to clients and they do follow the process. And I've put on the next page here what the process is, and there's a sort of 3 steps to it, which I'll quickly run through. But step 1 starts by saying, okay, let's have the accountant introduce the advisor to the client. And that's part of a general scripted presentation. And that presentation is all about the accountant switching to a more proactive business style. And the key sort of message of that presentation to the client is, if you, the client, want proactive advice, you're going to have to help us identify where you need proactive help. But the real step from our point of view, see, there's a message to the client, but really it's a forum for the client, for the accountant to use that built-in trust that they already have with the client to introduce this other party, in this case, the advisor. And here's what the advisor is going to do. The advisor is going to drive a proactive planning process. It's going to start with a diagnostic. We're going to understand and prioritize your needs. That advisor is going to then match those needs to a relevant expert. The advisor will probably do some due diligence, make sure that expert in our virtual family office team is a good fit for the client. Probably that expert is going to need some extra client information to help that particular client. So this step 2 is all about process. And it's sort of saying the advisors, given that they are a high D and a high I usually, are likely to be driving the process and particularly influencing the client to do what they want to do. But at this stage, nothing's really happened. We've introduced the client, we've got to a place where we understand needs and so on. But finally, you then get to a place where the accountant and the advisor and the client, together with an expert, most likely, are meeting to discuss the best planning options. And the object of that exercise is to educate and discuss the possibilities, and then finally agree what we're going to do and implement. And so what you've then got is true collaboration beginning to happen, where the accountant is using their character traits, which are all about building trust and trusted relationships, combined with that advisor who brings that drive and influence, put them together with a client where we understand their needs, and it all comes together. And what you've got is a great collaborative effort. And, going back to your question, Garrett, question was trends. And I think this is one of the big trends that, accountants and advisors, and it's sort of an offshoot of virtual, really. That, no longer do these people have to coexist inside the same building. I mean, I was working with another accountant and advisor last week. It's a couple of weeks ago. The accountant was in somewhere like Iowa, and the advisor was in Florida. And there was me, the expert from Rhode Island, and we're working with a client, and the client has been with the accountant for 10 years, but suddenly they're getting a ton more value. So, it doesn't have to, it is part of this whole virtual office thing, but it's a sort of sub issue of the trend, which is, accountants and advisors beginning to work together more effectively, to collaborate more effectively, so that the desired outcome, which is moving to becoming a 21st century advisor, is actually more likely to happen. So I think that's probably one of my top trends at the moment, Garrett.
And, Paul, that makes complete sense, because we're really kind of leveraging what we've got right now with our clients, moving to that proactive role and bringing in that other round of expertise, because we see that right now. Our clients have more issues than just tax and auditing and accounting. Yeah. And if you can not just, that referral thing we talked about, a true collaborative partnership with someone like that on that wealth management, financial planning side, so impactful, so powerful. We see that being successful almost every day inside our CPA firm, because clients just are asking those questions. And a lot of the financial advisors, to kind of go to your point in the DISC profile, they might be a bit high D or I, so So they're missing a lot of the details behind it.
Exactly. And I mean, and the other thing as well is, and this is not quite, it's a sort of sub point, but what we also find is that, you see, I mean, I'm going to use baseball parlance here, which of course I'm much less familiar with than cricketing parlance. But what we've discovered is that if you put these people together and coach them in the right way, the most effective way to do this, on the whole, is for the accountant and the advisor to work with the client to achieve what in baseball parlance I think you call singles and doubles. In other words, this doesn't mean necessarily swinging for the fences, trying to get a home run, massive big transactions. It's actually working with what we call the mass affluent client. They don't need rocket science necessarily. They just want good, solid planning, swinging. You don't need to get, as I say, you don't need to be trying to hit a home run in your first at bat. Just aim for singles and doubles and accumulate, and the whole thing begins to snowball. And that's that other aspect of working together, I think, has also been very effective.
Absolutely. Once again, we see that all the time. It's just that little thing that their current financial advisor isn't awful or bad at their job, but they're missing the tax impact. So their financial advisor might be saying, you got 6.5% return this year. And we say, well, yeah, but you get taxed 4.5% on that. So your net return's 2. And they're like, well, hold on. How's it 2?
Yeah.
Because they forgot about the tax impact.
Yes.
Like, once again, that tax impact is something so small. It's not a home run.
Yeah.
It's a very basic single or double that to them makes a big impact.
Of course, exactly that. And and here it is, somewhat ironic. In 2020, I'm trying to use baseball as my analogies. So next time we talk, I think I should probably use a few cricketing analogies just to even up the score somewhat.
To keep the American audience on their toes.
Yeah, exactly. That'll confuse them.
All right, Paul, as always, thank you for sharing. It's always some great insight. It's a very important trend to stay on top of in the profession, because if you think you're ready for the future, this is a trend you should be taking care of right now. Partner yourself with the right financial advisor, not just a financial advisor, the right one, so you guys truly line up together. And as always, you want a little more insight on how ready you are to pair up with somebody? Take a free objective assessment, the free biz survey like we've talked about. See where you stand. You might mention in there one of the things you're struggling with right now is partnering with the right financial advisor. I think the average CPA firm partners with 7 or 8 or 9 financial advisors so they get it right. So don't make that mistake so many times. Take the survey, see where you stand today, and let us help you do a little matchmaking for you. There's a link below. I encourage you to click on it. There's also a link above. Click to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Stay up to date. Thank you for watching, everybody, and take action today to change the world and invest in yourself.